Alright, so part of the reason why I wanted to start this vlog is to sort of talk about issues that are important to me and my thoughts on certain issues that I see, being important. And one of them is religion. Now, there are a lot of things I could talk about, having to deal with the subject of religion, and to be honest about it, I don't really know where I fit in on the great religion platform of, like, everything I believe about religion. I'm sort of just finding things out about myself and religion as I go. But something that I have sort of started to make up my mind about is that there is this science versus religion argument in our society nowadays, and I think one of the major problems with that argument is that people seem to take a stereotypical view of Christians in that argument. I consider myself Christian. I border on it. Agnostic, border on it, but due to the fact that I was raised Christian, I believe that there is a God. I choose to believe that, since I believe there is a divinity, that divinity is probably Christian. That's just my choice. That's just my outlook. If I had to have a debate with somebody, I could probably be maybe possibly swayed if there was a theological debate. And I read all the holy books and theological books in the world, but I don't have the time for that, so I just say the one true God is the Christian God. That's my view on the subject. But my problem with this for now is that people seem to take the stereotypical view of Christians. People seem to think that all Christians are like Pat Robinson and the televangelists, those crazy guys. And most Christians I know of aren't. You'd be surprised at who's a Christian around you, because most people don't tell you their religion unless you ask. I mean, you have to sort of take those sort of things in consideration. And I guess one of the main reasons for this idea I'm having about this is that my primary model of what a Christian is my mother. She's a Christian. She doesn't believe in evolution, and despite many debates I've had on the subject, despite many documentaries I've shown her, she doesn't believe in evolution. But that's her prerogative. I mean, she's not a bigot. She's not prejudiced in any way that I can tell. She's a moral human being who raised me, which, to be honest, isn't always the easiest thing to do, to raise, somebody, especially somebody with my personality. I get that. Thanks, Mom. And religion is a big part of her life. And she's not, crazy like some of the televangelists you see on TV. I mean, people seem to believe that the televangelists are, who the Christians are. They aren't. Most of those guys, most Christians I know of aren't really trying to use Christianity to forward an agenda like those guys. And that's sort of what's happening. You're seeing minority of Christians try to forward their own agendas using the religion, and that's sort of perpetuating this stereotype against other Christians. Another sort of thing I have to keep in mind is that it's hard to be a Christian nowadays, mainly because there are certain things that you can't ignore. You can't ignore that, at least in my opinion, evolution exists. You can't ignore that in our political climate, there are some crazies out there trying to, forward various political agendas. You can't ignore those things, and it's sort of hard trying to figure out religiously where you are on the map, while in today's world. I mean, the world isn't as simple as, everything in the Bible happened as the Bible says it happened, with no sort of metaphors or historical context whatsoever. Today's world is more complicated than that. You can't just lump everything in there like that. And I just sort of think that you can't be as fixed in your religion without taking into consideration, scientific evidence and just sort of mulling things over in your head. You can't just sort of be a lemming. And I think that's what some people are trying to ask us to do, particularly the televangelists. they're asking people to be lemmings. My view of the Bible is the right view of the Bible, and everybody else is wrong. And I think that that's wrong for other religious reasons that I've thought about. I'll probably get into that in another post, but that's just sort of my view on the science versus religion debate, that there has to be sort of a balance. It's not, you can't just say Christianity is wrong, or religion is wrong, or spirituality is wrong. You can't just say that, but at the same time, you can't ignore scientific evidence. You can't say, just because it doesn't happen to agree exactly word for word with the Bible, even though there's evidence, credible scientific evidence, that something happened, or that dinosaurs existed, or that evolution exists. You can't just throw that stuff out just because you don't like it. Just because it doesn't happen to agree with something you've read. You have to take things and examine them. And I think that most Christians get that. And people are just trying to figure out where they fit in religiously. They're trying to figure out where they stand with that stuff. And I think that this sort of, and I think that the two camps, this, I can't believe you call yourself a Christian just because you happen to believe in evolution. How can you? I think that camp sort of, belonging to the same chagrin, I believe that the whole evolution doesn't exist, you guys are wrong. That camp is also equally wrong. There has to be sort of a way of examining both the Bible and scientific evidence and sort of patching together what is the actual truth of the universe. And I don't know that truth. I'm still sort of trying to mull it over in my head what I believe. I'm going to have to square away with God one of these days. But, despite what they tell you in church, that today might be your last day, I'm at least hoping that, I have some time to think about it. Try to figure out my beliefs and where I stand on everything in terms of religion. And that might take a while. But I'm not particularly in a rush, and I don't want to have to be put in a rush. And I know that the threat of hell and damnation is there if, I don't figure out where I stand within a reasonable amount of time, but I just need to sort of mull things over, and I think that's where the majority of America is. We have to religiously think about what we believe. And I just think that saying that somebody's wrong on both counts is just sort of just wrong, to sort of just try to discredit somebody for their personal beliefs, because I do ultimately believe that religion is a personal thing that everybody has to sort of come to terms with God themselves. You can't sort of just rely on what the church tells you. You can't just sort of rely on what your parents tell you. You have to come to terms with God by yourself through your own reflection, through what you know about the Bible and what you know about the world and what you observe and what your conscience tells you, and just sort of come together with that stuff. And that's my view on science versus religion.